Hello everyone, I wanted to show you a little bit of the production that went into the lead guitar parts on my solo for the song Shade. It's pretty cool. Let's take a listen to the track first. Cool, so that was pretty neat. So what's going on there is to make this big epic solo sound, I've got the dry guitars, but then I'm sending them out into three things parallel. I typically do parallel delay. So I'm sending that out stereo via a reamp box into a Strymon timeline. So let's hear just the dry guitar first. Here it is. Okay, and let's take a look at it. So you've got the different guitar performances here, but if we, and I'm using like a dual mic setup on my KSR amp, and all I'm really doing here, if we take a look at the EQ, doing just a simple EQ where I'm cutting everything off real hard at 100 hertz. A lot of times that works for my lead guitars to give them a little bit of space in the mix, but not make them sound thin or anything. All right, and I should say about that sound, what I was doing there is I was using the fourth channel of the KSR Artemis set on the lowest of the four gain modes, so it's a little bit crunchy but has some compression to it, and I'm running a full tone ultimate octave. It's basically a really extreme Octavia pedal into that, and it's similar to something Joe Satriani did on the Crystal Planet record, and you kind of have to use it that way or it's just not as cool and it sounds a little too weird in an ugly way. So it took me a while to figure that out. I think that's why they're not as popular as they should be, because they're hard to figure out how to apply them in a mix and in your signal chain. All right, so to that, I did something a little unusual. I added a modulation, stereo modulation to this. So what's going on is, rather than using a modulated delay, I'm not really a fan of modulated delays a lot for lead guitar, because it ends up sounding like you've got, chorusing your delays sort of, and some people like that, but I've never had great luck with that all the time on my own leads. So I tried something different here. I sent it out of the reamp box into a full tone Deja Vibe, which is their version of a classic Univibe unit, and it's a mono unit. And so what I did is I sent it out twice and printed them with a little bit different speed and then panned them hard left and right. So if you hear the dry guitar in with the modulation, here's what you get. All right. And so you're getting a little bit of a widening effect and a little bit of movement, but you're not really sure that it's even there. Here's what it sounds like with just the modulation. All right, so you can see I've got it faded in really subtly. I could bring it up and have it be really extreme, but the idea isn't to have you notice it, but just to create some width and movement. So then the next thing I do, usually I don't use reverb. I'm not a huge fan of it, but this was working out really good in this scenario. So what I'm adding to this is I've shot a impulse response of my living room in stereo, and I've got it actually in the Space Designer plugin in Logic. So I'll kind of show you. There it is right there, and the EQ that's built into it works really well. So I'm using that to take the impulse response and sculpt a lot of highs and lows off so that it's not really harsh or really boomy. It's going to add some stereo width to the sound. So here's what you end up with. So that's pretty cool by itself. All right, and then the last part of this, what I'm doing last of all is I'm adding, a 400 millisecond delay ping pong, and that's pretty common for me. A lot of times I'll time it to, the track, but then sometimes I'll just do something that kind of feels good for the timing. But for me, and if you had to just do a general set it and forget it kind of delay line for lead guitar, I really dig a stereo ping pong at around 400 milliseconds and maybe 3 to 4 echoes at the most. I'm not big into real extreme stuff like that. But you can kind of see on this, what we've got going on there is, about 100 millisecond, 100 hertz cutoff there, really hard. Sometimes I'll go more than that depending on how it sits with the effect. So I think because this was an Octavia effect and it can be kind of bright and shrill, having everything around it in the stereo fields sound a little warmer helped. Sometimes when I'm doing my normal lead guitar, like really thick, high gain sound just from the amp, sometimes I want to sculpt the delay to have a lot less low end to make that sit a certain way. So let's take a look at that. I should also note too, earlier when we were talking about the modulation, let's take a look there. See, that's got a little bit higher cutoff on there to make that a little bit less bass heavy, because that was an analog modulation pedal. So, that kind of works there. A lot of times I'm finding that I'm getting really close to the EQ I want by the way I mic it or set the tonality of the device. And so I'm not doing usually really extreme sculpting with EQ. A lot of it is just high passing, things like that, and then maybe just subtle EQ. So let's hear it all back together again. Cool. Well, there you have it. The real trick to that is stereo parallel effects. So the concept there is I'm not running the modulation into the reverb or delay. It stays completely dry on its own path. I'm not running the delay into the reverb. I'm setting them on their own path. So that way each one is a layer that isn't polluted by the other one, so it doesn't get muddy, but you get the benefit of each effect staying clear. There's always the opposite approach, which would be maybe a modulated delay, which it gives you a certain sound to the delay, more of a chorus shimmering ping pong delay or something like that. There's always the thought of sending some of your delay, into the reverb, which would basically diffuse or soften the repeats of the delay. These are all completely valid techniques, and I should stress that, you should try different things, and sometimes something that hasn't worked before in a mix is just the thing that the mix needs. And this song is a case in point. I usually don't like reverb on lead guitar parts very much. I like to use the delay to create space, but not wash everything out. But because of the space in the mix and of how focused and bright the Octavia sound is, it needed the space. So I could actually use the stereo field more because the dry guitar in the center was a lot more focused and taking up less space than it normally would. Anyway, I hope you got something from that and learned a little something and enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.